Are we good, Brian?
Not yet.
Okay. Somebody remind me to tell Jess when we get through the public hearings, because she wants to listen in as well. And she's here for the
Okay.
It's about to prepare to live stream on YouTube. It's just taking a moment.
It says it's live streaming on my recording.
Yeah, I think it just went forward. So you guys are good to go. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So today is May 21st. It's 7:03, and I'm calling to order the Common Council Ordinance regular meeting. In attendance today is Josh Goldman, Johan Lopez, Melissa Murray, Nora Najowski-Eitner, and Jalen Seed and Lisa Shanahan. So that's 6. We have a quorum. The first matter that we have on the agenda is to discuss and vote on the amendment for 61A leaf blowers, and there's a public hearing. So I'm going to open the public hearing, see if anybody's here to speak on that matter.
If anyone would like to speak on the public hearing on leaf blowers, please raise your hand now. No one's raising their hand.
Okay, great. So I'm going to close the public hearing on public leaf blowers, and then I will open the discussion and the vote to for the amendment. Just to remind our committee, and also just for the purpose of the public, basically what we've done is we have narrowed the required safety features to now require people to use manufacturer recommended and rated personal protective equipment in accordance with industry standards, potentially including but not limited to eye, hearing, and respiratory protection. Do any of our committee members have any questions, concerns, or thoughts before we take a vote to send this to Common Council for approval?
Lisa, just 2 quick changes here. It's not potential, it's potentially.
Oh, yes, let's, yes.
Hold on 1 second.
If you could make that change. Thank you for reminding us about that.
Potentially including but not limited to, comma. Okay. And then and any other changes that people want to make, and we also have to discuss the date when it's going to go into effect.
Right. And we were going to choose the date of July 1st to give people time to acquire equipment.
Put that in for now and let everyone talk about it.
Any thoughts, concerns, suggestions from the team?
I appreciate the concern about giving people sufficient notice. Do you think we should bump it back 1 more month just because, I mean, by the time this passes the council, July 1st is actually not
August
even
1st
early.
sounds great too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just want to be
August
accommodating
1st?
to the public. Yeah, let's say August 1st. That should take care of
Okay.
it. Great. Any further thoughts from the committee? So I'll entertain a motion right now to take this ordinance thank you, Melissa, to take this ordinance to Common Council. All in favor? Please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Great. So the next matter that we're going to do is we're going to open public hearing to discuss and vote on Amendment 9-27, which is the 2024 transition provision of the ordinance establishing an advisory committee for the reapportionment of Common Council voting districts. So Brian, if you would see if anybody wants to raise their hand to discuss this matter, that would be great.
Sure. Oh, and so far no one's raising their hand. And I would just also make a note that I did not receive any emails concerning either of the 2 public legal notices of public hearings here tonight.
Great.
No one's raising their hand.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing. And so the next thing to do is I'll entertain a motion to vote to take this to Common Council. Thank you, Jalen. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, amendments to this proposed ordinance? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is all of us. That's great. So the
And
next
again, the only change was we changed from 30 days to 120 days to allow the reapportionment committee to be approved.
Yes, and I'm going to ask one of our committee members, does somebody have Jess's, well, I know, Josh, can you text Jess to say that we're through the public hearing so she can join us? Thank you. Great. So the next item on the agenda is the acceptance of minutes. The first set of minutes is for April 16th, 2024, which is our regular meeting of the Ordinance Committee. Can I have a motion to pass to accept the minutes? Thank you, Melissa. Does anyone have any changes, amendments, deletions to that first set of minutes, I mean to say? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes as filed? Everybody said yes, great. The next thing to do is April 24th, 2024, special meeting of the Ordinance Committee. We had a very short set of minutes there. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes as filed? Thank you, Nora. Any questions, changes, deletions? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes as filed? Great, it's all good. All right, there you go, Jim. And Garrett, we got through that a lot faster than I thought, under 5 minutes. So right now what we're going to do is discuss the City of Norwalk Complete Streets Proposed Ordinance with a presentation from Jim Travers and Garrett Boyle from the Transportation, Mobility, and Parking. And I'll turn it over to Jim and Garrett.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. That was the fastest little motion to get us here. So
I mean, 2 public hearings and 2 sets of minutes, that's pretty darn fast.
right. So I think most of you have been along for the ride already. This has been a little over a year of work on this with the Strategic Advisory Committee, the planning, the creating this. And so we have the design manual nearly complete. We have, this, I think this is really going to help set the stage for, how we design and build our city going forward. I think we were very excited to be able to work on this. For tonight, we just wanted to give you a quick update to Complete Streets to make sure everyone's on the same page before you guys take this up in Ordinance Committee and take it home. So Garrett, you want to run through the presentation we keep together?
Yeah, I'd love to walk everything. So good evening, council members. Brian, I think you might be driving. So if you could advance the slide to the next slide. But we really wanted to take this opportunity tonight, as you'll be taking up Complete Streets legislation within the coming months, to introduce the concept of complete streets for those that it's new, and then refresh those familiar with it as to the importance of complete streets. And if we could advance the slide. And essentially what we're really talking about with complete streets in its simplest terms is really just streets designed for everyone, designed and planned for people. So whether that's people walking, people riding a bike, even people driving cars, people riding transit, and then people using micro mobility, which has really exploded in the last decade. So it's really something new that we have to look to accommodate on our roadways. And it's also, I want to highlight that it's really considering all ages, all abilities on the network. As part of this process, we held a walk audit on North Main Street, and we gave people the opportunity to roll the street in wheelchairs and then to put on goggles, which really simulated, potential vision impairment, and to let people traverse the streets and understand, where the challenges are and where the opportunities. And that's something that we look to address with Complete Streets to make the roadways more safe and accessible for everyone. We're really looking at an all-encompassing and really holistic approach. And this is not only the design of our streets, but also the planning, the building, the construction, operations, and maintaining our streets to make them safe. So it really is an all-encompassing approach. If we could go to the next slide. So this is a typical cross-section of a complete streets, and we're really moving beyond the traditional approach to roadway design, where historically we've just really looked curb to curb and really at the travel way of the roadway and where vehicles are. With complete streets, we're really looking at the curbside. So whether that is on or off street bicycle facilities, all of the different curbside activities that we need to accommodate in a growing city, whether that's providing on-street parking or loading zones for businesses, accommodating new things like and technologies like Lyft and Uber, and really transform the way that we use our streets, and even creating seasonal spaces like parklets or opportunities for people to engage and create additional public space for people to enjoy throughout the city. Complete Streets also looks at the pedestrian zone, outside of our curb. We were at a meeting last night with the community for the Route 1 corridor, And heard a lot of interesting things from people. For example, while Route 1 has sidewalks, a member that attended last night said, I would have never really thought to walk on that road because it isn't really comfortable. So yes, complete streets will help address safety, but it also is important, the comfort of the facilities. People won't use facilities if they're not comfortable, and it addresses a lot of that experience, whether it's a pedestrian experience, a cyclist experience with the street, but trying to improve it for all. And then it also, complete streets is a really context sensitive design approach. It's not just that pedestrian zone or the curb to curb width of the street, but we're looking at here, and I really want to emphasize the entire right of way, and also how our entire right of way complements and supplements the adjacent land uses. So making sure our roadways connect to whether it's a village center or a neighborhood, or integrate with a school zone or anything of that nature. So this cross section shows a number of different elements. Complete streets will have many of these elements, but not every complete street will have all of these elements. And the goal here is that they will be different and created on a case-by-case basis. The last thing I want to say about this slide is we can't reduce congestion in the city if we don't provide safe, convenient, and comfortable alternative and viable modes of transportation. So this is another reason why complete streets is yet so important. If you could advance to the next slide. The next slide that you'll see is really, it talks about the vision for the city. So we adopted a plan of conservation and development in 2019, which really called to action the need for complete streets. In 2022, when we completed the draft transportation master plan, it really also doubled down on the need for complete streets. And I think this quote really emphasizes a vision that requires a thoughtful approach to create a well-connected network. The legislation that you are going to review and create and complete streets is really the glue that allows us to plan and design a consistent network. And it also ultimately is going to support the city's long-term vision of eliminating serious injuries and fatalities on our roadway. If we could go to the next slide. The next slide talks a little bit about our approach to complete streets. Why do we need complete streets? I just want to emphasize traditional roadway design was really based on a limited set of very auto-centric roadway classifications, really just 4 to 5 roadway classifications for an entire city, of which Norwalk has over 1,300 roads. So you can kind of see the problem right there. Those 4 to 5 roadway classifications don't really fit the context of all our neighborhoods. So what this complete streets legislation will allow us to do is not eliminate our roadway classifications, but supplement them with a number of different roadway typologies. We're actually going to propose doubling the number of different typologies that we have. And all of these different, you can see the map on the right, how many different roadway typologies are, but they'll allow us to have a really context sensitive approach to how we design our streets. So I can give, as just an example, a classic, challenge is when we have a minor or major arterial in the city and it crosses through a school zone or a village center or a neighborhood center or a business district. The road should feel different. It should accommodate lower speeds, slower turning vehicles. It should be very multimodal. And just our previous approach has not allowed us to do that. And this is kind of the problem that complete streets will solve. And empower our practitioners, whether it's the city or outside agencies, developers, everyone to design and think about all modes of transportation. Next slide. So in our office, we live by the motto, what isn't measured isn't managed. And complete streets also helps us to address numerous other city goals. Again, we're talking about not just the paved roadway, but our entire right of way. So it gives us the largest opportunity to rebalance our roadways, reduce impervious surface coverage, implement green infrastructure, helps us address our tree canopy, which also helps us address air quality. It also provides us a toolkit, and it will eventually create a design guide, which will allow us to address safety on the roadways. And, really what we saw in from 2015 to 2019, there were 14 fatalities on the city's street and over 26,000 crashes, 10% of those which involve serious injuries. So it is a large problem, but this will help us to start to address that problem and then position us very well moving forward for a Vision Zero policy. If you could go to the next slide. So this is a little bit about our approach and the reason why Jim and I are before you tonight. So over the coming months, the committee will deliberate an ordinance, which will lead to the adoption of a policy, a design guide, and an integration plan for the city. So by way of being here tonight, we wanted to let everyone know on the committee that we are available as often as you would like to assist in answering any questions you may have during the process, and then as you craft the ordinance. So we're more than happy to come back to assist in that development. As a department, we're committed to engagement. We've done numerous engagement throughout this project. You see the box at the bottom. What we're looking to do at the end of June is to have a demonstration project. I think it will fit really nicely with the timeline for your deliberations for the Complete Streets Ordinance. And it'll be a project that takes place at the intersection of North Main Street and Ann Street in the city. But ultimately, what this will do is it'll allow people to engage on a really personal level to understand what Complete Streets feels like on a personal level. So we're really excited for that. We invite everyone to participate. We'll be painting some curb extensions as part of that project, and we'll need some help rolling out paint on the city streets. But the project that we're going to showcase, will have elements for all modes of transportation. We're looking at how we can add some on-street parking spaces to support the businesses, bump out curb extensions and corners to shorten crossing distance for pedestrians. We're actually adding a crosswalk and adding signalization so that we have all legs of the intersection defined. So there's numerous benefits for all modes. We're creating a really slow speed environment to improve safety for cyclists. But that will be coming forth, and we'll have a flyer really shortly to invite everyone at the end of June. But I think it does coincide really nicely. If we could advance to the next slide. So we wanted to include this to provide a little context. So we anticipate that Norwalk will be the 14th city in the state to adopt an ordinance. But one thing that makes Norwalk is really unique is you can see there's on the column headings at the top, whether it's a checklist or a design guide or some form of a committee, some requirement for reporting. We are looking to include all of those elements in our policy. So I think it will be really robust. It'll be really comprehensive. And it will, again, you see that last column, tee us up really well to approach a Vision Zero policy in the future. So when we looked at recommendations for a draft ordinance, we considered many of the different ordinances that have been completed to date within Connecticut. And then we also looked at some of the national best practices that you can see at the bottom of the screen as well. And then if we move on to one of the last slides, just again, wanted to emphasize the importance and really the why behind Complete Streets. So on the bar chart on the right, you can see a really disturbing trend of pedestrian fatalities increasing over the last decade in the United States. It's a national trend. It's a state trend. Norwalk has bucked the average, but we really need to codify Complete Streets through the city so we can continue to deliver projects and all departments, all agencies, everyone doing work within the city can add to the vision of Complete Streets and help us combat what has been a really disturbing trend. On the left, you'll see there's just a list of the number of elements considered best practice in Complete Street and policy design. And I just really wanted to emphasize just a couple points about those 10 bullet points. But what this ordinance, will do is it'll basically set Complete Streets as a rule, and it will no longer be an exception. So for example, when we design the street, we'll look at applying features and elements for all modes, and not necessarily having to justify it, whether that be through the development, the private development process. This will apply to that as well. And it also will ultimately mean that Complete Streets is no longer just a set of projects, but that all projects in the city are done, are Complete Streets projects. And then if we could advance to the very last slide, it just shows a graphic of the demonstration project and what that looked like. I described a little bit earlier, but we'll have a flyer shortly, and we're more than happy to share it with the committee. Jim and I really wanted to be here tonight and want to give a short presentation, but really be available to answer any questions that the committee may have regarding Complete Streets, whether it be the ordinance or any of the different components we discussed. Happy
Great.
to answer questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for both of us. Can you just for more for the public and for people who are new to some of these concepts, can you tell us what Vision Zero is and some of the other words that might have come up as jargon that not all of us might be as familiar with what those stand for?
Yeah, so Vision Zero is really a federally adopted policy, but ultimately what it's looking to do is eliminate fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. It sets precedent in that it recognizes that really roadway safety is a shared responsibility. So, not just looking within engineering, but looking with our partners, whether that be enforcement, education, even as far out as emergency response. I think one of the important things about Vision Zero is it's about being proactive in safety. So the standards have changed over time, over the last several decades, and it's really about making sure that our network is designed with accommodations, understanding that people will make errors, and that making sure that if someone does make an error and there is a crash or collision, that it's survivable. So a big part about Vision Zero is speed management on our streets. We know that at lower speeds, the rate of a severe or chance of a fatality is much lower. So there's a major component of Vision Zero is speed management on our streets. It's also being redundant in our approach. So really more is better. So, whether that's pedestrian safety, making sure we have really enhanced and high visibility crosswalks with, push activated lights, for example. And it's really the culmination of all of these things together will bring about sustainable change. And I think it's something that's been accomplished in other cities, and it's something that's very feasible. And I think this positions us really well. It also, I'm not sure if I mentioned, the safe system approach, and, that really is in tandem with Vision Zero. Safe system approach is, humans are vulnerable. We need to design the roads with the understanding that people do make mistakes, and we need to make them safer.
So Complete Streets embraces Vision Zero as part of its goals.
Lisa, if I can add to that, I think one of the I think a good drum roll to that is this has been a part of what we look to do all along, right? And we continue to build to that, and we just got notified that we of an award for a grant that we wrote for Safe Streets for All. It was a very competitive grant. We've not received it in the last 2 times we've tried. We just got notification that we have been awarded a comprehensive safety analysis, and that will be the backbone that we use for Vision Zero. It will look at all of our intersections. We'll look at all the locations. It will look at mitigation strategies that we will put in place to reduce fatalities on city streets and make our streets more livable. And we think that's about the basis of creating community, right? Getting people out into the street. I think one of the disturbing things that we heard last night in the community meeting for Route 1 was a number of people saying, I avoid Connecticut Avenue because I just don't like to go there, right? And because I don't feel good. So I think we want to get that in a better frame. So I think you'll hear more on the Safe Streets for All grant, but we were very excited to that. That will be part and parcel to what we're doing for Complete Streets, and then be the backbone for our next move, which will be Vision Zero.
Gotcha. Melissa, you had your hand up first. You've taken it down. Otherwise, I'm going to call on Johan. So Melissa, if you would go, and then Johanna, if you don't mind, after Melissa.
Yes, I just had a quick question and I hope you guys can hear me. I have a raspy voice tonight. So I know that this is about safety, but there's also a lot of water issues in Norwalk that people have been concerned about with flooding, and there are sewer grates and things like that that are usually at the side of roadways, and we're changing grading. And does this look at, I'm sure it does look at all that design, but I have no engineering background. So when we're raising our sidewalks and changing our streets, how does that impact that? And you had mentioned resiliency in the plan. How is our plantings and all that kind of an environmental impact here?
So I'll get in,
Yes.
Garrett can join in. I think every project that we do in partnership and in tandem with DPW. So anything that we look at, when was there curb line that DPW is involved in, the drainage, they have, they have a fantastic team up there. And I think it is coalescing as a fantastic team together that we look for this. So drainage will also always be looked at, but I think Vision Zero starts to look at just beyond, Complete Streets starts to look at beyond simply just repaving a road and making that you saw the map that Garrett showed you before that highlights our heat island, right? So we want to make sure that we're looking at those. Those are opportunities for us to put in bioswales, right? Those are opportunities for us to make plantings, things that will help to reduce, that heat index in particular areas in town, right? And I think one of the things that we want to also recognize is our sewers can only handle so much, right? So what, if we could reduce the impervious surface, then we could actually start to absorb some of that, the rainwater, throughout the entire ground, and not just move everything to a sewer system. So I think in short, please be guaranteed that every project we do in partnership, we meet with DPW on a weekly basis. Right. We talk about their projects, about our projects. We give each other input. I think it's, it's super fantastic way to move forward. But you raise a great point, and I think that we need to start looking at, and we put in bioswales into Complete Streets because we need to start looking at alternative ways to deal with rainwater, that is, moves it beyond just putting it into a sewer line.
Yeah, I think that's just really wonderful. And I wanted to understand the full integration. So I'd like to learn more about bioswales at another time, but thank you for that information.
So
Okay.
Johanna.
All right. You guys hear me? Thanks, Jim and Garrett. Quick question. Do you guys anticipate any sort of potential conflicts between the vision for Complete Streets and, let's say, some of the objectives of, like, let's say, the DOT? Is there anything that you anticipate, any possible conflicts, or if you have had conflicts in the past, like, how have you guys rectified some of those conflicts?
So I think the CTDOT adopted the Complete Streets policy. I do think ours will be more robust and certainly context sensitive to the city of Norwalk. From our experience, we've worked on a number of different grant projects. There's very high level conversations at the state about making it a requirement to be eligible for future funding, to have a Complete Streets policy at some level adopted in the city. So this safeguards us and allows us to be even more competitive for the existing programs. Community connectivity is just one example where you're scored higher if you have these types of policies and guides in place. So I do think it makes us more competitive as a city. And then it really does set an expectation. So when the state comes and it does projects on their roads in our city, we have really a clearly documented set of guidelines for what the expectation of our streets are, and we can help craft projects so that they're respective of our overall vision for the city streets. So I think it really does well position us, and I don't foresee any negative impacts of us adopting a Complete Streets policy with regards to any state programs or funding.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Garrett.
Other questions for Jim or Garrett? So just to give people a little bit of background, one of the reasons why we repeated this presentation was because we now have new committee members. This has been something that we've been working on as a council and in this committee for probably almost a year, I'd say. Right. Oh, Melissa, you got another question?
No, go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, okay.
I can after.
Okay, so what I was gonna say to everybody is that we're working on a first draft. So we have been working with a consulting firm, FIH, which Garrett and Jim will tell me what that stands for if it's necessary. But they did a first draft. It was 26 pages. It's not exactly Norwalk centric type of form. So we assigned it to Josh, and Josh has done 2 drafts so far, turning it around. And so I think our timetable is to hope that we might be able to get a draft to the committee members sometime in the next month. We'll sit down with each of you. Josh and I will divide the committee, and we'll sit down with each committee member and just go through the structure of the ordinance, just to give everybody an idea of it. And then we'll have a robust conversation at our June meeting on the next draft of the ordinance. We think that it'll probably take us 2 committee meetings to get through the ordinance and have it in good shape. Because we don't usually have a meeting in August and it's a bad time to have an important public hearing. We're aiming to have our public hearing on this ordinance in September with the hope that we can send it to council in October. Josh, anything else we should say on the drafting of the ordinance?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I want to say about it is that Jim and Garrett, who gave an excellent presentation tonight, really gave you a lot of the framework of what the ordinance is all about. The 2 most important components, or at least 2 of the most important components, is the Complete Streets policy and the design guide, which, as you heard tonight, something that Jim and Garrett and their team have been working on for a while. And actually, we would be the 15th municipality to get Complete Streets done, but we want to be the best. And so we are, and I think to sort of put a finer point on what Johan was saying, to have a robust Complete Streets policy is going to make us more competitive at the state level, and also going to make us safer for our residents. And when Garrett talked about multimodal transport, the idea is we want people to be able to get around Norwalk in more than one way and not be dependent on just cars. And that is going to take a huge effort that is combined both at the local level, but also at the state level with NTD and a lot of related industries and DOT. So it really is going to take a village. But TMP has taken a really wonderful lead on helping us get there. And Jim and Garrett, congratulations on that grant. That is fantastic news. And by the way, and we've already put language in the draft ordinance thanks to Garrett sort of helping work this in, language that's going to help us so that when we do get around to Vision Zero and are ready to do Vision Zero, the framework's kind of already going to be there. So we're planning ahead as well as planning for now. So you guys should be able to get a draft ordinance. I would say, Lisa, I'm going to say sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
That's what
and we'll go over it with everybody. So you will not be first seeing it at the June meeting, but obviously the public will be.
Yeah, and we can have a really good discussion then. So Melissa, once again, beat you with the hand up. Johan, if so, we're going to let Melissa go and then you. So Melissa, you said you had a question. Did we lose?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Go ahead.
No worries.
Josh answered it, so go ahead, Johan.
Quick question, and it's something I think I wanted to ask, because I think I brought this up probably this whole issue about like security cameras. Is it uncommon for these sort of ordinances to include anything related to penalizing those that don't abide by like speed limit limitations and stuff? Or is that something that requires a completely different legal frame?
Well,
So it does
speed
require,
limits and like traffic related. Oh, no, Jim, go ahead.
so it does require a separate ordinance. So we have to follow the guidelines that have been established by CTDOT, and there are a number of things. It is, I think the end result has been much more complicated than what was initially anticipated. It was adopted by the state effective January. There are no municipalities doing it today because of the requirements that have to be put in place So we are continuing looking at how that is going to be accomplished. Garrett and I both meet with various members throughout the community who head these departments, statewide, to talk about, what of our partners out there doing it. I don't think that we need to do, this doesn't need to be part of, because the complete street is really about how we're designing the roads and how we're building it and how we're thinking about everyone. The operation of it will be, will be under a separate document of I have been advocating and giving testimony for longer than I care to even announce, right, up in Hartford. So I'm very excited it's here. I wish it was a little bit easier to implement, but nonetheless, we are going to look at what are those opportunities for us here in Norwalk.
There are going to be some ordinances that do need to be adjusted with regard to complete streets. We haven't completely organized that yet. We're going to be working closely with Brian to go through some of those. So, and we'll be looking at some other type of wraparound ordinances, but that's all for the future, including this one.
Excellent. Thanks, Lisa.
Josh, you were going to say something more to Jim's point.
No, I think Jim covered it. I really don't. I mean, we will make sure that any ordinance we have, to the best of our abilities, is consistent with state law and any existing ordinances, unless we decide to amend them, which is something we always do.
Anybody else on complete streets? Oh, Nora, I thought you might have been coming off camera because you had a question.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the presentation. It's just easier to be off camera so that I'm trying to lean into the screen to look at things. So one question that, this is maybe overarching and may or may not show up in the ordinance, but I am kind of curious about, is there methods of incentivizing people? So we create the structure, right? We have the pedestrian space, we have the bike lanes. But are there structures, or are there ways that we can incentivize people to actually choose those modes of transportation? So, I mean, part of it is certainly facilitating and making it easier and safer. But it's complicated, right? To make a transition from being sort of a car dependent person to, using more alternate methods. And I don't know if that fits sort of into this ordinance. I don't know if it sort of fits into your planning process, but I'm curious about how we kind of help people utilize these new larger streets once we've kind of put them in place.
So if I can, Nora, I think when you look at good road design, we always talk about, the 4 E's, right? We talk about engineering, enforcement, education, and engagement, right? And I think that, hopefully we have been working on that engagement one all along. I think it is one of the things that we strive for in everything that we do. We have a very close relationship with the police department on enforcement. We are having the engineering done, right? I think part of this process. There's an education component that I think really ties in nicely to what you're talking about, right? It's people need to understand the benefits, not just build it, but we need to be able to talk about it. And there is a component of complete streets that's really dependent on education. And we have been having conversations with our Bike Walk Commission and asking them to take the lead on the education portion, to get out there and talk to people about all those benefits, to work with the partnership of we work very closely with the transit district. We're working with them on bus hubs and how that could better be suited in their operational analysis throughout the city, right? But it's not good enough if we just do that, right? We also have to tell people about it, right? And we have to give them, the benefits. I think incentives, in my view, it's really, I think we could look at individual things, but it's what's disincentive to today, right? Is our lack of sidewalks. We had a press conference on Chestnut Hill today with Senator Duff regarding the Doublewood poles, right? There is a sidewalk, a footpath that we like to call them, right? That you really have to walk 1 foot directly in front of the other. That's about what you have there. And we're seeing people navigate. And if you have any level of disability, you're not able, our sidewalks or our footpaths aren't accommodating you, right? So giving somebody, when we were in West Norwalk for a public meeting a few weeks ago, when you dissect all of the comments that are being said, it's about, I can't I don't feel safe on the road when I'm walking. And those are issues when you don't have a sidewalk, right? Where there's sidewalks, people feel more comfortable. So creating a network that's supportive of them, I think will help to do that, and then do the education to talk about the benefits. Getting walk clubs out there. The Norwalker part. We work very closely with our friends at the health department. Would love them to death. But so those are the various things that we could do. We work with the folks at the NRVT for cleanup days for the trail, right? So I think we'll continue to do much more of that under this umbrella, and when you really can solidify it to move forward.
Jalen.
Thanks, Jim.
Oh, thank you, Nora. Hopefully your question's answered. Jalen, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, to that point, I think it's kind of like if you build it, they're gonna use it. And I think just like I talked yesterday, we talked at the public meeting. I worked on Connecticut Ave. I actually lived off of Connecticut Ave and worked on Connecticut Ave. And I walked to work, and it wasn't a fun walk. I had to use a lot of the side streets up there. So I think that once you have a better way to walk, people are going to use it, because I think there's people who probably do want to walk or bike, but they just don't feel safe. And I think kind of holistically, everything that's going on with the Route 1 study on Connecticut Ave and the improvements that's happening on Wall Street, I think this is a great time to make sure that this continues past all of our time in civil service, that this is going to keep going, because it's going to be a lot of great work that's happening all across the city to really make sure that we have these improvements where people do feel comfortable walking. And a lot of great stuff coming up in a year. So I think that's what I'm excited about, this ordinance, that it's going to put it where it's not just a rule, but it's a law that people are going to follow for the history of Norwalk. And it's really exciting because I know just growing up in Norwalk, when we had to walk because we didn't have a license or anything, you end up taking back roads or finding safer ways to walk. So I think it's going to be really exciting. And I think once we make these improvements, it's going to be incentive enough for people to really start using it and enjoy the walks. And then all people have to do is take a walk with Jim, and they'll want to walk forever.
It's true.
It's very
Thank you,
well
Jalen.
said. And I just want to add too, we recognize it's a major culture shift. And, part of codifying complete streets is so that everyone's speaking the same language. And it really, part of complete streets is that design guide, right? And it really creates the resources for everyone in the city doing work within the right of way, to push forward complete streets. And I think it will trickle down. I have faith it will trickle down to everyone and help to create this culture shift.
Great. Melissa, you've got your hand up again.
Yes, I just wanted to, I agree with Jalen that if we build it, they will come because especially, I know we were talking about Connecticut Avenue, but the footpaths in the north part of our city, in the more bucolic areas of our city, used to be neighborhoods that people walked. And when you were showing the graph about how Norwalk has sort of dodged the pedestrian deaths, obviously that's great, but my thought went to that's because we have so many less walkers than we did back in the 70s and 80s when I grew up here as a kid, because as we've grown, those streets have now become cut through streets and people are driving on them very fast. And so a little, leisurely walk through your neighborhood is not necessarily so safe anymore. So I'm really seeing that this connectivity that Garrett was talking about, both at the major intersections, but also increasing those footpaths, is really going to, just encourage people to feel safer walking, and that will make them come out. I also wanted to mention, I've had a few constituents ask about Fairfield Avenue Bridge and actually request that something be done that makes it easier for pedestrians to cross there. So it's a bridge for cars to get across the city, but I've gotten constituent ideas of like, maybe you could do a little pedestrian bridge over Connecticut Avenue, some way to get across that easier. And as we're talking about this, and I know I'll forget in the future, I just wanted to throw it out.
So I don't know that we can get a pedestrian bridge. I know that I've had a million conversations with DOT. I know they're diligently working at record speed to do a replacement bridge, and so we're anxious to hear more from them on what that would when that would be delivered. We continue to work with DOT on the adjacent signals on the other routes out there, so that we can bring better facilities to make that happen. I think all the efforts are being put to get a permanent structure in there. I don't know that a pedestrian bridge would even work, because they need to do work on the abutments. So they would need the abutments for the pedestrian bridge, so they can't work on them at the same time. So I think it's I think we recognize that it's a challenge, and we're trying to look at alternate ways that people could get there, but also minimize the disturbance and get that bridge replaced as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely understood. But I think more the point of the idea was just saying, maybe if it doesn't even happen there, at some other point in Connecticut Avenue, if there was a pedestrian crossing, or that provided some safety, that people have been asking for it. So I feel like they're kind of asking for a complete streets plan without realizing what they're asking for.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're hearing more and more about people walking, right? And they want to be able to walk around, right? That's, and they're very free with the challenges, right? And that's great, because it challenges us to get things into action, right? But we will continue to push DOT on delivering something, in record speed. And I think I don't think anyone in the administration has their foot off the gas on that one.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Any further comments, committee? Otherwise, we're going to let Jim and Gary go get their dinner. Looks good. Excellent job. Thank you so much. We really appreciate
Thank
it. So
you.
this is just the
Thanks, Garrett
introduction
and
for
Jim.
the work of this committee for the next 3 months. This is going to be a big project, and we're really excited about it. So thank you very, very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Hans.
Thank you.
Have a
Appreciate you.
nice,
Appreciate
have a nice
you.
night, you guys.
Yeah.
You too.
All right, so now
Take care.
Jessica is up. So the next thing that we have on the agenda, and the last thing is, and I'm just going to read these all together because they're all related. So we're going to discuss and vote on chapter 69, which is the Norwalk Harbor Article 1, General Regulations 69.2, 69.5, 69.6. We're going to discuss and vote in chapter 69, Norwalk Harbor Article 3, Norwalk Harbor Management Commission, section 69.20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. We're going to discuss and vote 66A, which is mooring and anchoring, Article 1, Rules and Regs 60A 3, 66A 8, 60A 9, 66A 12, and 20. And then we're going to discuss and vote 66A, mooring, anchoring, Article 2, permit fees, section 66A 26, 66A 27. That's a mouthful. So I just did that so Jess doesn't have to. She can just talk about the whole thing.
Thank you very much. That's more than I probably will be sharing this evening. So, I think, as this committee knows, from time to time and consistently behind the scenes, we've been kind of working through and milling through all the ordinances that have that are related to the work that we do in economic community development. And it's just really great to see Jim and Garrett do all of their work and presentation on complete streets, because it's just another example of sort of helping the city get to where we think it needs to be. And in the past, we've worked on the blight ordinance, and you've also seen us work on the sidewalk ordinance and many, many, many other things. And tonight, it's the Harbor Commission, the Harbor Management Commission. So the Harbor Management Commission is actually staffed by Planning and Zoning Department. It always has been. It oversees and actually governs the Harbor Management Plan. And so the Harbor Management Plan is a document that's been created and it's reviewed and updated regularly, but it relates to how we oversee the harbor itself, and not the day-to-day operations per se, but the overall policy and what we charge fees for, and how we charge those fees, and how the fines work, and how moorings and anchorage process works, and so on and so forth. And so we've been working with the Harbor Management Commission specifically on the general regulations, as well as the Harbor Management Plan, and all of those regs that Lisa was reading and ordinances that Lisa was reading, to be able to clean it up and be able to really clarify the process and how harbor fee schedules are approved. It relates the changes that you'll see, and I don't think we're going to go through them specifically today. I talked to Lisa and she just asked for us to introduce the topic today. But I think as you go through it, you'll see consistencies with what you've seen in other ordinances, which is that we've tried to take the dollar figures out of the actual ordinance itself and refer to a harbor fee schedule. We've tried to clarify the process of where the approvals will happen and how they will happen. And, you know, in this particular case, what we've said is that the Harbor Commission may propose fees, and that would come to the Economic Community Development Commission, and that Economic Community Development Commission would hold a public hearing. And after the public hearing, it would then go to the council for council's review and consideration. And so, you know, you'll see a lot of redlining or blue lining in this particular instance for the document, but a lot of it is wordsmithing and making consistent. And there may be questions as to why we didn't just change one document and why we changed a couple of them, you know, 2 or 3 that Lisa had just read through. And the reason for that is because the language is so interwoven and they all relate to one another, right? So where one document may say the harbor fee schedule and comment on the Harbor Commission, the other document comments on, you know, planning and zoning department and something else. And the language may not be consistent between the two and so on and so forth. So again, it looks like a lot of edits and it looks like a lot of changes to the document. However, as you read through, you'll see a lot of it is wordsmithing and trying to bring clarity and a little bit more effectiveness to the process. And so, you know, more than happy to answer questions either today or next week after, or excuse me, next month after we have the public hearing and we want to talk a little bit more detail about it. But I'll leave it there for now.
So there's 2 ways we could do this, committee. We could go through this in detail with Darren, next committee member, and then a committee meeting and send it to public hearing. Or, you know, we could, I don't know if people really feel comfortable having gone through all of this in some great detail before our meeting. So let me know. It's oftentimes that we don't get these things until Friday. So it's pretty quick turnaround. Melissa, you've got your hand up. So while people contemplate what our process should be, Melissa, you might have a question or two that'll help people think about the details of it.
Actually, I didn't. I'm sort of for taking this and working on it a little bit more on the side because it was lengthy. And I feel like I would need a little bit more time with it. I just wanted to mention is I did find a couple of edits while I happen to remember 69-21. It says federal and state, and it should probably say pertaining to federal and state laws. And I think in that section B as well, it said something to follow the fee schedule or should only follow the fee schedule. Just my journalism background doesn't like those sort of words like only. They leave room to it'd be more clear to just say follow the fee schedule.
Yeah,
Melissa,
excellent. Thank you.
If you want to give me a call either on Wednesday or Thursday, I'm more than happy to go through any nits or edits or revisions that you might.
That'll be great. I do think that this is one of those things where we're just sort of introducing like why we're doing this. And at the next committee meeting, I think Darren Callahan is the one who's responsible for the draft. So we can have him kind of walk us through and tell us what the general structure is. And at that time, we could vote to take it to public hearing. And this isn't, you know, too controversial. This is something that if we went in July, the Harbor Commission people tend to be around in the summer. So we'll certainly let them know we're discussing it.
I should actually mention that we did meet with Alan Kibbe and also Jeff Mangles to talk through. Alan Kibbe is the chair of the Harbor Management Commission and Jeff Mangles is the vice chair. And so we did meet with them offline and discuss it with them, and they reviewed it and they're comfortable with all of the changes. Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it's just bringing this ordinance into the shape that we generally hold most of our Norwalk ordinances to. Melissa, you still have your hand up. So did you have a follow-up question, or otherwise I'll move to Nora, who has just raised her hand. Oh, Nora, let it go.
Hi, thank you very much. You just answered part of my question was saying you had discussed it with Alan Kibbe. I did wonder if it had gone in front of the whole commission, and if there had been any other feedback on this. I mean, it does all seem, you know, I spent some time looking at it, it all seems like pretty straightforward and not particularly substantive cleanup, but I just wanted to double check if there was other comment that we should be aware of.
Yeah, so we do plan on sharing with the commission. We actually met with the commission in a more in a larger meeting last year or a year and a half ago to talk more about the fee schedule and what the fee schedule changes should look like, and for them to offer some feedback on how that process should look, and thinking about taking into economic community development, thinking about public hearings, and also posting and what that looks like, and then the approval for common council. So we met with a bigger, larger group, as I said, about a year and a half ago, and everybody was on board for being able to look at those, to incorporate those changes. The clarity really is what it is. And we did pass it by Alan and Jeff to make sure that we got it correct and we got it right. But we will bring it to the commission. We have not done that as of yet, but they do know that we are working with it. And I believe that they know, they had a meeting. They actually have a meeting this week. So we'll be sure to update them and let them know that we brought the ordinance to you today.
Terrific, great. No, because I think the timing then works well, because if people do have any further feedback, we'll have plenty of time to consider it next month. So fabulous. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
So we're not voting to take this to public hearing at this point. We're just bringing it to everybody's attention, hoping that everybody gets a chance to read through it, because it's tedious but not complicated, I would say. How about that?
And juggling many documents all at one time.
Yeah,
and how they
exactly.
all fit together in some weird and wonderful way. Yep.
Josh, were you raising your hand?
The only question I had was whether there are any additional ordinances that should be contemplated or possible modifications that, I mean, I haven't looked through exhaustively if there are other ordinances that may be affected by these changes. Or basically, is this the one-shot deal, or is there going to be sort of more to come?
So the Harbor Management Commission is an interesting animal, and it has many different governing documents and regulations, and Brian Candela and Darren have been helping us to such a great extent understanding what all of those are and how they all relate to one another. And obviously the example is what you see tonight, which is Lisa reading for a minute and a half all of the things that we've had to review and make changes to. I think that for this particular change, we're in a good place. What we do need to do, and what we've talked to the Harbor Management Commission about, is the need to be able to update the harbor management plan. And, you know, not to get too far into it, but for an example, we've been talking a lot about charging a certain fee for slips. And what the discussion is that basically you are only able to charge fees for what is in your harbor management plan. And the harbor management plan today only mentions moorings and anchorage fees. So we are unable to charge for slip fees. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to build these documents that are in front of you to be able to encompass more of what we would like to see in the future, so that as we make changes to the harbor management plan, we don't need to come back and actually change these a second time
That's
around.
great.
So yeah, we're just trying to be thoughtful and strategic about how to include the verbiage to allow us a little bit more room on how we want to start to think about that moving forward. The other piece that I should mention is that we are, as you folks know, we're moving forward with a harbor strategic plan, which is funded through $120,000 funded through the ARPA funding that we received. And we were able to do interviews with all of the vendors, and we have a vendor that we've chosen, and the Harbor Management Commission was part of that exercise. And so we're going to be moving forward with them. And it's not a harbor management plan that we're looking for. It is a harbor strategic plan. How are we strategically thinking about capital investments in the harbor to be able to utilize the harbor to a greater extent? And I think that through that process, it's very likely that the consultant will look at all of these documents and ordinances that relate to the harbor and guide us even further on if we do need to make change. And so, you know, sitting here today, I think we've been pretty thoughtful about trying to include everything that we can see, you know, in the near future. They may require more change as we start to bring consultants on that are subject matter experts in this particular area. And if that's the case, we'll bring them all forward in one go so that everyone can see how they relate to one another. But that's really the only thing that I can see moving forward, that if we need to bring the same documents back to you to be able to review.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good. Great. So with that in mind, does anybody want to entertain a motion to adjourn?
Thanks, Jessica, for coming.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Melissa. And thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much, Jess for this presentation. So we have a motion to adjourn on the table. All in favor?
Good night,
We are
everyone.
adjourned.
Good
night,
night,
thanks.
everyone. Be
All right,
safe.
everyone. Thank
Great,
you.
just then the phone rings. Thanks, everyone.
Night, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.